kind of scary. Are we live? Are we on? I don't know. I can never tell. Here we go. Here we go. There's the video. Hey, everybody. This is Johnny Beane, and it is 8:02 p.m. Eastern Time, March 6th, 2020. And we are live on YouTube and Facebook. So make sure to like and share and follow and subscribe, all that stuff. And we're joined by David Nesdahl.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yeah. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm having a happy Friday.
Okay.
How are you?
Can't complain. Everything's all right.
Cool.
Yeah.
So who's with us tonight?
Well, we have a very cool guest. We have one of the founding members of the Andy Timmons band, bassist, producer, and engineer, Mike Daane.
Mike.
How you doing?
Hey. Oh, where's the applause? Oh
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, we have panned applause and everything. We have all kinds of stuff.
Fantastic.
We're high tech over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, welcome, man. It's awesome to meet you.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Why don't you say hello to everyone first, Johnny, and then we'll get into this.
Hello. Hey, Stream Elements. Welcome. The Dog Paw, Brendan B Squared. Pal Guitars. Thank you so much, man. That helps with the StreamYard, which, again, we're broadcasting to Facebook and YouTube tonight. So you can join us on either platform. Joe Hervey, 84, is here. Mike Neese, Chris Bevan, and everybody else.
Cameron Brown is here.
Cameron Brown, good to see you. Thomas
Thomas
Santiago,
Santiago.
good to see you, man. Ken Kodor. Everybody, welcome.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is a podcast, too. I forgot. So
Yes. And where does it stream?
it's on SoundCloud. It's on Stitcher. It's on iTunes or Apple. I think it's called Apple now. What's it on? Spotify, TuneIn, and hopefully iHeartRadio at some point if they ever return my calls.
Well, hopefully they will. Zach Thung says, "Hey, Johnny, Dave, and Mike Daane." Hey,
What's
Zach. All right, so let's just start by saying I met Mike a few years ago at the Iridium in Manhattan. The Andy Timmons band was playing, and I seemed to always be sitting on Mike Dane's side of the stage. So and it's it's not a very small room, but it's small enough where pretty much you can say hello to anyone. You could put your hand out from the stage and shake anyone's hand, pretty much. And between sets, Mike is a very approachable, very nice and kind gentleman. And we had conversations and we spoke about his bass and his bass playing and just stuff until Andy was ready to go back on for his second set. And I just, we kind of kept in touch here and there a little bit on Facebook. And this past year, Desiree and myself went back to see the band play. And of course, I'm sitting on Mike's side, front row. And we spoke a lot. And I asked Mike to be on our show. And he said, yes, I'd love that. And here we are. So thank you. I want to just say thank you ahead of time. Thanks for joining us on this.
It's an honor to be here, man. Thanks.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how the Andy Timmons band started, how you met him, and how you guys even developed the band, first of all.
Okay. Well, we'll have to do a little time travel back to the late 80s. I was in school up at the University of North Texas, and Andy had just come over from Miami. He studied down in Miami playing classical and jazz down there. And he started a band called Brinker. There's a guy named Ray Brinker, who was the drummer, and another guy named Steve Bailey, who's an amazing bass player. and they heard about Andy, and they wanted to get this great rock guitar player to join their band Brinker. And so they brought him over, I think in '85, and that was about the same year I got there. And I heard about this guitar player and this band, and I remember going down and seeing them at the Rock Bottom Lounge and on campus, and it was amazing. There was Andy he kind of had his thing fully formed for the most part. He had the chops, but he had the melodicism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really stuck out to me. It's like I heard a lot of guys with chops at North Texas, but this guy, he had the rock thing, incorporating the jazz, but he had this melodic sense that just took you places. And I remember seeing that, and I'd go see them play when they played locally, and that fell apart. I think that fell apart after a year or two. And Andy was looking for people to play with to maybe start a new project, and that was about '88. And I was called in to go do a jam session, and I was a little nervous, but we kind of clicked instantly. Something that's kind of interesting that I was thinking about earlier today. It's like all the members of the Andy Timmons band, we all grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in the Detroit area, Indiana, and Mitch was in not Nebraska, but somewhere near. Anyways, so, and then we all migrated to Texas. There was this Midwest to Texas connection that we've all had. And all the drummers we've had throughout the years, Mitch, and then Dan Wojciechowski, he grew up in Michigan. And then our current drummer, Rob, he grew up in Michigan, about an hour away from me. I didn't even know about him. And we met down at North Texas. But there was something about growing up in the Midwest and what we were listening to musically, and the just the culture. It's very different from the coasts.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sensibility that we had about where 2 and 4, felt on the drums. Like where's your kick and snare falling? It's very unique to the Midwest. Just like a Texas shuffle is very different from a Chicago shuffle. So we kind of connected like that. I grew up listening to a lot of the same stuff that Andy listened to, and he's a little bit older than me, but he and I, we just connected on, we both loved the Beatles, we both loved Kiss, we both loved all these classic rock bands, and yet we wanted to learn jazz and phrasing and classical. We wanted to keep we wanted to incorporate some other things into this classic rock that we grew up with. Mm-hmm. And so we're in this jam session, and we just started going places, and it felt great. And said, hey man, we need to do this again. And so we hooked up another jam session. We tried out a bunch of different drummers we wanted to work with, but we just instantly had a connection. So, yeah, we need to get this guy. Let's try this drummer. And then we both said Mitch at the same time. And it was like, yeah, that's the guy. And then we just started recording, doing stuff and playing. We'd set up on, there's this in Denton, this famous street called Fry Street. Just a little strip of the street, but they have a big fair there every year. But during the rest of the year, we would just go out there. There was a kind of a head shop clothing store called the Zebra, and we'd plug in, take a power strip and plug into there, and we'd set up and play outside of this shop on Fry Street.
Zebra.
And
I wonder
there
if
would be huge crowds just kind of gathering around. We would just making stuff up, just these jam sessions. And that's kind of the way Denton was back in the day. It was a very unique, cool place where spontaneous acts of jamming could happen out in public.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that's a chain, because I remember there's a place called Zebra in Berkeley.
I have no idea. I think the Zebra is still up in Denton too. I don't know if it's a chain, but maybe just a coincidence.
Yeah, man. That's
so
cool.
From there, we started playing gigs, and we came up with the very creative title of the Andy Timmons Band, and we instantly just started gathering crowds. I mean, there was a good energy around the band. Andy was obviously, amazing. And mostly we were doing covers. We would do some Eric Johnson, Satriani, those types of things, the little ZZ Top. But we just kind of put an energy to it, and we would just we'd kind of open it every time we'd start the song, we'd go, and then it would just open up into this crazy jam. And so we started doing pretty well with that. And then right around that same time, Andy started getting calls from a couple of major label acts and things like that. And that's when the Danger, I think in like 89, 90 came along. And so he took that. He really wanted to try to get on the major label wagon at that point, and it was a good opportunity for him. So he went and did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then during that time, he would fly back on any break he had and bring us an original tune. We'd book time with me and Mitch. We'd go into the studio and we'd record 2 or 3 songs, and then he'd take off again and go play with Kiss and do the rock and roll dream thing. And then he'd come back, and then we'd get together and do it all over. So we were piecing together the very first Ear Ecstasy record while he was in Danger. And then he came back after all that kind of fell apart, and we had a record, and we're like, hey, let's put this out and see what happens. And that's kind of how we started in Denton, made some headway, took a little break while Andy was out being rock star and doing great things. And then we came back and we kind of started the Andy Timmons band from there.
Man.
That's a cool story. That's pretty amazing. That's wow. And so from there, how did you guys start getting gigs like nationally? Like how did you get that all started? I mean, just from piecing a record together, did you get a record deal first, or did you, were you all in a van going around the country, or how does that happen? How did that happen?
How did it happen? It's just slowly, and just whatever we could cobble together at the time. We didn't have a formal label. Andy had a deal with a Japanese label that would distribute our stuff in Asia, and gave us a little bit of money, I think, to make product. But we didn't do a lot of band in the van at first. I was also at that time, the early 90s, I had a band in Dallas called Last Rites. And when Andy was doing Danger, I was playing in a band called Last Rites, and I was touring with an amazing singer-songwriter named Sarah Hickman. And she had just been signed to Elektra. So I was doing that. And we actually, it's going to go off in some side stories. Sorry.
That's okay.
With Sarah, we had the opportunity that was right at the same time Avia Musicom came out. Eric Johnson's maybe his greatest record.
Which, by the way, I saw him on Tuesday night. His show
I saw
was
that
amazing.
he posted some videos. Yeah,
it was crazy.
He still sounds amazing.
Yeah,
he's super cool. And we when I was playing with Sarah, we had similar management connections in Austin, and they actually had us open up for Eric on a West Coast tour. So I got to hang out with those guys for a while, and I'll tie that in later in our conversation about gear nerd stuff. But came back, and that's the best way to do this. There was other stuff going on. We didn't do the Andy Timmons band full time. We would book a few gigs here and there. We'd book a mini tour in Texas, maybe hit a couple different Texas cities. There was a lot of studio work going on at the time. Andy and I both got married, and we were doing a lot of different things at that same time. So we didn't like full on get signed, do things. I mean, there was nobody was scrambling in the mid 90s to sign an instrumental rock trio. It's just, I don't know that they ever were, but so it was kind of up to us to do what we needed to do. And then Andy, in that period of time, he was asked to do some work with Simon Phillips, and that kind of was the a pivotal moment for what we were doing as well. He went out and toured with Simon, but that all of a sudden put Andy back in this spotlight, but a different world, into the jazz world, like where he was, people knew him in the rock world, and they kind of didn't really understand that he had all this other stuff going on. Anybody that knew Andy back in the 80s knew that he had a wide breadth of styles, and he could do anything he needed to do. And how great what a great improviser he was, and how deep his knowledge was. But anybody who outside of that world just kind of knew him as the guitarist in Danger. And so he had the opportunity when he played with Simon to kind of get exposed in that world, into the jazz world. And it really changed people's attitudes about it, because he kicked ass on the Protocol records. He went on tour with Simon, and he kind of reignited a different style of playing for him, and it gave people insight into what the solo stuff with the Andy Timmons band. And it opened up an opportunity for when he went and toured over in Europe. His manager was like, "Hey man, why don't you bring over your trio?" And so it was like, okay, so we started booking European tours, and just using local promoters and whatever we could cobble together. And so that was about the time we had our third record out. Like in, I think that was 98, 99. We started doing a lot more touring over in Europe, and then we started picking up some Asian dates, and kind of went from there. So, and that's, as far as like really moving forward in the world, and getting out there and playing a lot, and people understanding what we're trying to do as a rock band. That's when that really started to open up. It was right around 2000. So that was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
I didn't want to do incredible the math on that,
man.
But yeah.
So would you say that it's more profitable to tour outside of the U.S. than it is in the States?
Oh, that's a good question. We've spent most of our time. The opportunities have been overseas for us, and we've taken advantage of that, and we spent a lot of time in those European markets and the Asian markets. And we have, unfortunately, the opportunities to tour in the U.S. were not there. So we did a U.S. tour back in 2016 when we did for the theme record, and it went okay, but it wasn't. We hadn't really worked those markets yet. So I know if we kept working those markets, we would do well. It's just a matter of, it's hard, man. It's hard to get out and do stuff. And especially when we only have a limited amount of time that we're able to put the band together and actually go tour, and we need to maximize that. So we tend to go where the good coffee is, and that's Europe. So.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me, man.
Yeah, I going out on the road. I mean, I've never been to Europe, so I would kill to do that. That would be pretty cool.
that's how it's been a wonderful opportunity to see the world, and travel is the best education that you can get, just to go and experience a different culture, eat the food, meet the people, travel on their trains, and I really feel blessed that I've been able to do this, and on our own terms. We built this from the ground up so many years ago, and we haven't had a label telling us what to do. We've been able to make the records that we want to make, and have a lot of autonomy because of that. And it feels great to build something from the ground up that you did in your house, and just to take that on the road and be successful with it. It's been a blessing, and people are wonderful everywhere we go. And because we're not a huge group, literally and figuratively, we keep it very svelte when we tour. We only have a couple people that we take with us, but it allows us to really see a lot more of the countries that we're in. It's not just flights and hotels. We can actually get on the ground and experience the cities and the land, as it were.
Guitar safari. You can go on guitar safari.
We can take a little side trip here and there. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So it's safe to say that you've been recording your records right there in that room.
We did all the theme record was pretty much done here. There was a couple of tracks that we did with Mitch that were cut in a different studio. That's just the drums, but yeah, all the guitar, bass, and drums for most of the record were cut here and mixed and mastered here.
That's got to be great. That saves a lot of money.
Well, it costs a lot of money to put together a studio.
Well, that's true. I mean, once the studio is all together, I mean, the cost of the record shouldn't.
If you were to balance out how much, because of I'll back up a little bit to the Resolution record, and that's when Andy and I started working together in the studio. Because up to that point, he'd call me in, we'd learn the tunes, and I would record the tunes. He'd say, "Great job," and then I was done. And then he and the producer Rob Wexler, they would finish the record, and then I'd just hear it on the back end. And when we were working on the Resolution record, that was kind of a turning point in Andy's tone and career, right in the way he was writing, and the tone he was getting, where he was going was he was really finding a unique voice, and I was really intrigued by that. And by that point, I had my own home studio for about 10 years, and I had started to build up some decent gear and had some experience, and I felt confident enough to approach him. I said, "Hey man, would you mind, I'm just going to put this out there. You don't have to do this if you don't think it's going to work, but I'd really like to pursue this record and the songs in a different manner and collaborate with you on this, and really see where we can go. I really love the direction that you're headed, and I think we should spend a lot of time searching for that." And I didn't hear from him for a little bit, and then I got a call, and then he showed up with a bunch of gear at my studio, and we started working on the Resolution songs. And
wow, and what a great record that is!
Thank you.
Even the tone of it, everything about it is just a great record.
We set a high bar for ourselves on that one, where usually he would have backing tracks and then he'd play a lead over it, that kind of thing. And he wanted to do it strictly trio. So it would be one guitar, one bass, and one set of drums.
Mm-hmm.
And we stuck to that. And that was the tricky part of that record. But man, we learned so much from that, because he had to get a tone that would work all up and down the neck. And any of your guitar player guys are going to know that a rhythm sound is going to be very different from a chunky sound to a lead sound where you're up high in the neck. And you had to find one tone that was going to cover all that, and he had to play the parts. And if you listen to the record, I mean, it's what he's doing on that is amazing. He's come up with a way to play rhythm and lead at the same time and comp underneath that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because that's what he's all about. It's chord solos, you know. It's like,
yeah, and that's where that style really came from, was developing these songs on that record, and to find some, you know. So we would spend 2 weeks just, you know, with stacks of Marshalls and other kinds of gear, and we started what I call we started down. It's the Eric Johnson Trail of Tears is what I call it. And we weren't trying to mimic Eric Johnson's tone, but we were going after his ideal of finding the perfect tone, and always be searching and always be trying things. And that's what Eric does. And he comes across these, you know, all the battery stories were real. I mean, it's like, he can tell the difference between the different batteries. He can tell if like the speaker wire is wired backwards. He can hear that.
Wow.
And we don't have ears like Eric, but we started to develop an understanding for the differences in tone that all these little changes would make. So we were doing stuff like that. We were trying different tubes, different sets of tubes, the same tubes over and over again, different amps. Different cables. We were, you know, does this cable sound as good as this cable? It was insane. It was, and it took I've got a mentality to go down these rabbit holes that I don't know a lot of engineers that would. So that's why it was, I think he was happy to work with me on that, because I had a lot of patience in that regard. And and I was just as interested as he was, and we were finding things along the way that we use to this day, and just that work ethic that we developed, and this record needs to be a statement, and it was, you know, it really turned a lot of heads in the guitar world when that came out, and still very proud of that record.
it still holds up. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, it's kind of like the same as Steve Vai's Passion and Warfare. It still holds up today. You know, it's a great record.
Yeah, and he spent a lot of time working on that record. You know,
Yeah.
shows. There's I think he had it done for several years, and waited until after. I think that's correct. He waited till after he did a big tour.
Whitesnake.
With a Whitesnake, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Then he released Passion, but
yeah,
he was smart.
yeah, and he was playing some of those songs as his standalone guitar solo in that tour. So yeah, that's
cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, and that was the Resolution was the first full original record we did with Steve Vai as well.
So you guys are on his label.
We did Favored Nations, yeah. And Steve was very great all along the way. He said, make the record you want to make. And he encouraged what we were doing. We'd send him stuff, and he's like, man, this is amazing. Keep it going. And when we did the release, he did a really cool video that played above us right before we played. And, amazing guy. He's got a lot together.
Oh yeah. But it's a great story. You know, the whole thing. It's exciting to listen to. So all right. So real quick, I just say goodbye to my dad. See you later, Dad. Thanks for joining us.
See you, Dad.
See you, Dad. Hey, Dancing Louie, good to see you, dude.
Yeah. Hey. Excuse me. So let's stop there for a second. Let's get into your gear.
The gear. Okay.
Let's get into the gear. Let's get into the bass and the amplification. What did you use on the records, and what do you take on the road with you?
2 different basses. In the studio world, about 90% of what I do. Where is it? There it is. It's a 77 precision bass, Fender Precision, and
nice.
It's the mid 70s. Both my main axes are mid 70s Fenders stock. They were using a heavier ash back then. This thing weighs about 11, 12 pounds. My jazz bass weighs close to 13 pounds. It's crazy heavy.
Wow.
But this is what I record with most of the time. Sometimes I use the jazz bass if I need a little more of the 2 pickup tone. But generally, like when I'm playing live with the jazz bass, I'm just running the front pickup anyways. So that's the bass. Interesting. The strings on this bass. I bought this bass close to 20 years ago, and these are the same strings that were on it when I bought it.
That's insane.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
There's something about that. There's something about that with bass guitar. I
There's
couldn't do that with
something
guitar.
about basses. Yeah, for a guitar player, you're going, you're crazy, dude, right? And
Yeah.
but it still has enough top end. Yeah.
I just bought these.
Right now. He's
I just
over
got
restringing
these.
it.
And hey, Louie, hello to Janie. Hey, Janie. Yeah, that's
For
that's
my
great,
live,
dude.
the jazz bass I play live, I restring a little more often. And I've got the jazz bass over here.
20 years.
My God.
Well,
You
my
better get a tetanus shot.
my bass has had the same strings for probably 20 years too, but I've only picked it up like 4 times.
Right.
Now that's the bass I know.
Yeah, you know this one. And yeah, this has been my main touring instrument for about 15 years. When right after I bought it, it just became instantly my main axe. And nothing special about it. It's all stock. The only thing I've added was a drop D.
And that works great. I've seen that drop D in action. That thing, it never goes out. It's cool.
It's nice to have. I used to just have to, there's 2 tunes that we do drop D, and I would just kind of grab it real quick with the tuner, but it's nice to just, there it is. And yeah, it's generally in tune, and sometimes after you change a stringing, it takes about a week to kind of dial. There's a little tuning guy back there that takes a little while to dial that in, but it's pretty. It works great. Makes it a lot easier. That's the only thing I've done differently. Yeah, it's most of the wear marks are mine, which I really love. It's not pre-worn like a lot of instruments that are now. So,
yeah, there's something to be said about that. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's I've worn the paint off right there. That's me and all this stuff.
I love the still red in that bass, by the way. I love the red.
Yeah, the sunburst is killer. But these things are heavy, and that's one thing that really one of the reasons I bring it along with me, even though it's gonna kill my back. It's because it has just a really amazing sustain on it, and a depth of tone. It's just got it's a deeper tone, and it goes on forever. And a lot of guys would, with the lighter instruments, they would add weight by adding a badass bridge, which has a lot more metal on it, or they can add a little clip-on thing up here.
I've seen that
for the neck. And sometimes they use those to get rid of dead spots, but it gives the neck a little more stability as well. But this thing it rings out. It's still very Fender in tone and feel. I still feel like my fingers are part of the sound. But it just it's just more. And the style I play with Andy is very, some would say simple. I try to give a lot of space. And I mean, I can play fast if I need to. But I like to give Andy the best way I can put it. I'll give you my famous water metaphor. If you picture a body of water, let's meditate. If you picture a body of water, that's the base. And now see, you're on the coast, you can appreciate a fine curl rolling into shore for surfing on.
Mm-hmm.
You have,
I
if
was
you've got a
watching
good,
surfers the other day. Yeah.
yeah, if
I
you've
saw
got a
that,
good
yeah.
drummer, you've got someone that's creating these perfect curls. If the drums and bass are together, they're creating these perfect curls that roll in the shore. And that's giving everybody else, the guitar player, the singer, anybody else, that gives them the perfect curl to surf all the way into shore on. And so I kind of think about that. So my tone is kind of, I have a very
It's very
bass-heavy
round.
tone.
Yeah, it's very round.
Yeah, and I'm listening for the kick drum, and I'm just trying to keep that curl and that, you know, these waves washing into shore. So
Mm-hmm. Do you surf?
I don't.
That's interesting.
There's no place to surf in Dallas. So Detroit didn't have much surfing either.
That's a very interesting. I like that. I like that, especially being here in Santa Cruz. You know, I actually next time I go down to the you know, to watch, you know, the surfers, I'll think of that. I like that, man.
Yeah, and you can understand where if you've got a drummer and a bass player who not creating the perfect curl, where everybody just falls into the water.
Rocky Horror Show.
Sharks everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Fruitcake Tony in the chat asks, who are your influences on the bass?
Oh gosh, growing up, you know, Beatles, Paul McCartney, of course. First bass line I learned was Twist and Shout.
Nice.
And you know, the Who were a huge influence. So Entwistle. That was kind of my early introduction to improvising in a rock format. You know, listening to Live at Leeds and listening to these guys create this amazing cacophony of rock and roll greatness. So yeah, a lot of classic rock bands growing up. And then when I got to college, North Texas, I started getting exposed to a lot of jazz. And but then what was great about Denton was you had musicians from all over the world gathered in this one place, and everybody brought their record collections. So you could go to anybody's room. There's two guys living there, and they both have their record collections. And oh man, check this out. So we just sat around and listened to records, and we could do these deep dives with, you know, I got into reggae, so I'd find every reggae record I could find and listen and really do a deep dive on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as far as jazz goes, Paul Chambers, of course. Jocko, certainly did my deep dive with Jocko, like every bass player. One of my favorite bass players of all time is a guy named Rusty Allen, who was in the second incarnation of Sly and the Family Stone. He did these two records that are, you know, Fresh and Small Talk. And to me, it doesn't get any better than that. The guy's amazing and just grooving his butt off. And they're just beautiful songs. It's even though Sly was falling apart from the inside in that kind of mid-70s period, it was his best music he put out.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, those are just to name a few. I mean, the pat answers. I really like a lot of different bass players.
James Jamerson.
Yeah, growing up in Detroit for sure. Yeah, Motown was just part of my DNA growing up.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was. You know, it's like you just heard Motown and nobody really knew who the band was. But I recognized, man, that bass is cool. And then he began to get a lot more recognition in the late 80s. Jocko used to reference him a lot before he passed away. And and it's like, oh, that's that guy I heard all the time growing up, you know.
Yeah, on every record.
On every record.
On every record. That's right.
And so, yeah, and of course, there's a lot of stuff that I grew up with. I didn't realize it just sounded like music to me. I enjoyed the music, and I didn't pick out the bass line until I became a bass player and then I would go back. Like when I was in college, I went back and I did a Zeppelin deep dive, and I'd heard all these songs before, but I never really picked out the bass lines. Like, holy crap, this guy's great. It's revelation, right?
A lot of musicians, they say once they start playing an instrument, you go back and you listen to, you don't hear the music. It's not the same. You really you can pick out
you break
all the different stuff.
Yeah, and as an instrument, and an instrument you're going to play, you're going to be focused on that. And it's even worse for me because as an engineer and a producer, I'm like, oh, that snare sound sucks.
I do the same thing. I think we all do that. I think I'm like, man, that kick drum is great. You just
you start listening to
on one thing,
and how it fits together, and just like So yeah, it's really hard for me to go see live bands anymore because I used to, run live sound, and it's like, oh, dude, you're killing me, or damn, it sounds great, good job. But usually they're trying to decimate me with kick drum, and I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that.
Yeah,
let me do it.
Well, I have to reference the Eric Johnson thing again from Tuesday night. I mean, Eric is Eric. He's an entity in himself. He's an amazing guitar player. Of the three guitar players on the stage that night, I don't really think he had the best tone. Maybe a bad night, but his playing was ridiculous. But Roscoe Beck was
great.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic. And David Scher, it was the second guitar player and keyboard player. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous tone, ridiculous guitar player. He stole the show. Great musician all around. And they had Oz Noy as their guest, and Oz came and did 2 songs, and his tone was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It was just But you listen to these certain things. Like I got hung up on listening to Roscoe Beck for just a couple songs. I'm like, he just doesn't miss, and his tone is just second to none. It's just fits perfectly. Everything was great.
Yeah, he's a great player. He does fancy when it's appropriate, and then he just lays it down the rest of the time. And the early tapes that used to float around had Roscoe. Eric didn't have a record deal because he was held up with the Bill Ham fiasco. So the only way you could go see him live, and then there was all these cassette tapes rolling around that you could, the bootleg.
Yeah.
And that was the only way you could hear these, Eric Johnson. That's how we learned a lot of the stuff. When I first started playing with Andy, we had these bootleg tapes, and we played Zap and Cliffs of Dover, and Roscoe was on some of those. And I was like, who's that guy? That guy's amazing. Big influence on me as well.
I can see that. I can see that. And, going back to the show, the last couple shows that I saw of you guys, especially listening to your standalone solo, that first of all, you do 2 different solos if you do 2 shows a night. Is that correct?
It just depends.
I think you played both solos the second night that I saw you guys.
Right.
And both were just equally moving. Like they just, the feel was amazing. The note choice was amazing. God?
What was that?
That's my neighbor upstairs. Yeah.
Your bass, Dave, your bass just fell over.
Is that what you're calling it these days? Yeah. So I mean, it was just listening to your tone and the note selection, and it was captivating. It was as captivating as watching Andy all night playing. Doing what he does. It's incredible, and that just shows you how much you are just as important in that band as Andy is, because I mean, just the way you play so that he can do his thing it's almost a musical thing in itself. Like if you were just to put those songs out as bass and drums, it would definitely hold my it would hold my interest just as much as listening to Andy play, because it's right there. It's just all great, you know. And
that's very nice of you. Thank you.
Well, yeah. I mean, I enjoy great musicians. I don't care what instrument it is, but man, when you're that good at what you do, and you make that instrument sound the way it sounds, I mean, it's something else. It's special, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. The times that I saw you, I was like, and this is just as good as just watching, because I'm a guitar player. I'm always going to be a Guitar Hero type guitar player, where I love the Guitar Hero guy. But watching a good rhythm section and a great bass player and a great drummer, that to me, because, and I'll say this, you know, with all the respect in the world to Andy and Steve Vai and all the great guitar players, with a great rhythm section, a monkey could play guitar and it'll sound good.
Well,
it's just the truth. If you have a good rhythm section, anyone can play guitar if you know a couple chords, and it'll sound real good. But once the bass player or drummer is not so good, it's not going to be good. It's just not going to be good.
I'll agree up to a certain point, but yeah, it certainly is helpful to, especially a drummer. And gosh, we've had amazing drummers come through the band. And Andy's very, very particular about drummers, and there's a wide range of style that you have to be able to cover as the drummer. It goes all over the place. You have to have great ears. There's a lot of dynamics. There's parts that you have to play that are going to be the same every night, but then there's other parts that open up, and you've got to be able to kind of follow what Andy's doing. And to lead, you know, it's like you're not just following Andy. You got to lead a little bit. He wants you to, you know, he wants that interaction. And it's hard to find a guy or a girl that is going to cover all those angles. And I think for sure with the same as the bass player, you know, I've seen Andy play with a bunch of different acts and different bass players, and he adapts to the role of what he's doing. But when it comes to what we've done as a trio, we've developed this over the years, and I think that really shows when we play. You know, we're very sensitive to, you know, I can anticipate what Andy's doing. He kind of anticipates what I'm doing, and you just can't buy that. That's just experience and time, and hanging in the same room, van, hotel, whatever. You know, we've spent a lot of time together. And to you know, I love where he can take something, and I want to help him get there. And
yeah. So,
and I just, you know, I know when he's written and when he's ready to okay, this is the climax we're getting here, and so okay, we're going to move on and take it to a different place and develop ideas. And you know, we started out as a jam band, so there's a lot of that element, and having the jazz background that we all have really ties into that as well.
I think that really that's probably your strength, is having the jazz background, and you started out as a jam, you know, jamming,
right?
You know, and spending all the time together. Like there's this drummer I used to play with years ago, where we would just jam, just the two of us, no bass player, for just hours and hours and hours. And it got to the point where we could tell where we were going to go. You know, we would like what you were saying, like we would have the structured songs, but in the middle of them, we would do like 20-minute just jams, just guitar and drums, you know. But we could tell, like I could tell, okay, the drummer, I could tell, you feed off each other, basically, you know. So I totally get it, and That's awesome.
Yeah, it's when you get people that work together, the chemistry, it is a great thing, especially if it can last over a few years. And it's, like I said, you can't buy it. And to be able to, we've been doing this 30 plus years now. So we've learned a few things about each other over the years. So
yeah,
it's good
cool
stuff.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
It is, but
I don't want to think about that.
It is, but it's not. Like you were just saying something about, oh, that was 20 years ago. 20 years ago to me feels like, a couple weeks ago.
Right. I think that's something about musicians. We tend to think in very young terms. I think that's an immaturity that's kind of built into being a musician as well.
Yeah.
That's the great thing is about being a musician. You can be as immature as you want. And it's like, well, he's a musician. They're a musician, so it's okay.
It's accepted. Yeah.
That's great. So tell us about the amplifiers that you use.
In the early days, whatever I could get my hands on. And then I came across the acoustic 360, which is it's the amp that Jocko used, and it's the amp that John Paul Jones used. And
it's a really loud amp.
What's that?
It's a really loud solid state amp.
It's a loud, yeah. It was the first big bass rig. It came out in '68, and they made it through '71. And it's a big tall cabinet with a backloaded or a rear-facing 18-inch speaker, and it comes out the top cavity and the bottom cavity, but it's just the one speaker, and the amplifier is actually in the bottom of the cabinet. It's not in the head, and it's about 200 watts, but everything about the whole amp was designed very, very efficiently. The speaker itself, you have to have this specific Sherwin Vegas speaker, the L187, I believe. And it has to be that speaker because it resonates with that cabinet in the proper frequencies. Mm-hmm. I mean, everything about it was really designed. And up to that point, there was no bass amps. They had Marshall made a bass amp-ish, but it was just basically a guitar amp. And if you hear some of the Who stuff, and other bands of the time that were trying to be loud, the bass is really distorted because the tube amps would just distort with the low end. And the 360 was the first amp that had a clean signal for bass players, so they could sound more. They wanted to sound more like they did in the studio, or with a lower wattage amp. And so. And it was an expensive amp back in the day. I think it was like $2,000 in 1968 money, which is, $5 or $6 grand today. You think about that. So, I came across one of those. I fell in love with it, and I found another one. So I was playing through two of those for a long time, and I'd haul those around. They're not as heavy as the Ampeg because there's only one speaker. So I could just tilt it back into the van, and it would roll away, and I'd be good. And then when we started doing European tours, I couldn't take those with me, so I was always kind of searching for something that would give me something similar to those amps. And I got a guy in Canada to make me a pedal that was the same front end as the 360. And I was able to play through whatever rig was provided, backline, and still get my sound through that. And then a few years back, when we were in Italy, I started seeing these yellow bass amps pop up everywhere. Yeah. And I was like, what's that? And it says Mark on it. And so I plugged into one. And I was like, hey, this sounds really good. And I can get very close to my 360 tone, yet has a little bit more of a modern edge to it, which I actually was looking for. And up to that point, before I found the Mark bass, all the bass amps, they had a kind of a scoop in the middle. They were geared more towards the metal scene, and just they weren't really working on the mid range. And to me, the mid range is where the magic is in all music, really. I mean, you have your low and your high, but most of what we hear over the speaker systems is mid range. You know, from the very low to the very high. Mm-hmm. And that's what I loved about the 360s. They just had this magical mid range that would happen, and I could get that out of the Mark bass. So I've been playing the Mark bass stuff ever since. I was in New York, actually, at the Iridium. They had a rig there. I really liked it. I took pictures of it. When I flew home to Dallas, I went to the Guitar Center and said, I want this exact rig. Don't sell me anything else except this exact rig, because I know this one works. And so that's kind of been my rig ever since.
Yeah, I remember working for Guitar Center, and they had it there. I remember working for Guitar Center, and when Guitar Center got the Mark bass stuff, it was a big seller. Yeah. Good stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, they took over the bass market almost in 5 years. Their market share went up to 40% of the bass market. Kind of ridiculous. Mm-hmm. They've done really well, and they're good folks.
That's cool.
And whenever I tour, they're very great about making sure that I've got some gear to play through, so I can sound like me. And that's awesome. With Andy, it's so tone based. Andy has to have his boogie stuff wherever he goes, and for me to be able to get my tone has been equally important to create what we're doing.
Now, does Rob get to choose his drums when he goes on the road?
Depends on the region. I think he has a deal with Canopus, but they're not big enough to support some of the tours that we do to get drums into some of the places that we need to get them to. So they're very cool about if he needs to play a Tama kit, they're okay with that. Whatever region we're in, we'll rent or arrange gear through the local distributor, and they usually will carry a brand of drums as well as a band of whatever brands they carry. They're all under an umbrella of some
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Real quick, 7008 is in the chat, and that's our buddy Jay. He's our other co-host who couldn't be here tonight. He says, "Sorry, I can't be on tonight, guys. I would have loved to have been on tonight, but something came up." For those of you, and probably all of you who don't know, Jay became a daddy again last night. He's got an 8.6-pound baby boy.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Congratulations, Jay.
Congratulations, Daddy. Absolutely. And Jeannie. Jeannie did all the work.
Yeah.
Can you believe that she had a Les Paul in her stomach?
Oh.
8.6 pounds, a light Les Paul, but a Les Paul anyway.
And Ellie.
Yeah.
Ellie has
Ellie's gonna be very surprised. Well, she's already surprised, but yeah, good stuff.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam, how you doing? Adam from FU-Tone is here. Very cool. All right, so that's the bass stuff. Let's get into that. First of all, let's talk about that board behind you. Tell us about the board.
Let's see. Turn this the right way. So this is it's a 71 API. I picked this up about 8 years ago. When we moved into this house, I had this vision of building a studio that was going to be outfitted. If you walked into a really nice studio in the mid 70s, that's what I wanted to have in my studio. I wanted to go back. I had over the years, I started out with a 16-track deck and a small 24-channel board, and a few effects and a few microphones, and I built onto that over the years. But then as the computers started to play more into the picture, I of course, you know, went, oh, I can get more stuff with the computer. I can do more things. I can edit, you know, and I found my workflow and my fun level were kind of taking a dive. I just got really tired of mousing everything, you know, using the mouse to mix, to change EQ, to anything. And I was used to like, okay, if the kick drum needed to be louder, I would just go grab the kick drum and I'd push it up. And I wanted to go back to that, but I wanted to go back in kind of a bigger way than I had before. I didn't really have, I had okay gear. But so I had my eye out for a smaller format, 24 channel board, either API, Neve, if, you know, it was a little pie in the sky, but as far as budget goes. But this one came up and I was following it for like 3 years. I'd see it pop up and then it was always just a little bit out of reach. And then one day it was within reach. And I just figured out a way that we could do it. And so I brought it in and it became the centerpiece for everything else. And I love having a big console in the room. I love working on 1A. B, when clients come in, it's like, studio instead of just a computer screen.
It's now not a home studio anymore. It's a real deal studio.
It definitely changes perception for sure. And you know, I built out this room, the 2 rooms that I'm in. It's not huge, but it's comfortable. You know, it's the soundproofing is for real. It's all double wall construction, room within a room, separate AC controls, just touches like that really make a difference when you're working along. So I don't freeze out the musicians so I can keep the gear cold. You know, there's separate controls for the AC, things like that really make a big difference. And you're smiling like you know what I'm talking about.
I've spent a lot of
sessions have you done in a home studio where you're freezing your butt off and
I
can't play, and then you go into the control room and it's just burning hot, you know, because they're all up at one feed.
Yeah. Years ago, I was in a band and we were working with this producer named Desmond Child, and he had he was building a home studio within a house. Actually, at the house that I was living in, he was having a studio built like in the garage.
Okay.
And so I remember watching them build the studio and watching them. So I know exactly what you're talking about, a room within a room, you know, all that stuff. And I've spent a lot of time in a lot of actual studios and a lot of like bedroom, you know, computer studios. And there is a difference. There's a major difference. And I mean, when I saw your board back there, I was just like, I bet, you know, guys, you know, musicians, they walk in there and immediately it's inspiring to see that.
Yeah, I think so. It inspires me when I walk in. You know? That's cool.
Well, the first thing that I think of when I see a big board like that is the record's going to sound very warm. It's going to sound like a 70s LP. Right. And man, that's yeah. It's calming.
It is. And that was the aesthetic and the sound that I was really trying to go for with, you know, the last record, you know, Theme from a Perfect World. Andy and I we love 70s rock and just the, you know, that's just the era we grew up in. We were fortunate that, you know, we were kids when some of these records came out, and we remember when these records came out, and we would put them on and we'd listen to them, and just we had that full experience. And that's a sound that's weighs very heavy in our hearts, that we want to carry forward. And this board was a big step in that direction, as far as, you know, getting the aesthetic and the sound. It sounds lovely. It's just like you said, warm. It pleases me whenever I run audio through it. It's just very pleasing. I don't know.
Is it always on?
Describe it.
Is
What's
it
that?
always powered on all the time?
No, I turn it off. Like the lights on it right now are separate power. Just when I have power in here, they turn on. But some people leave their gear on all the time. I don't. This would cost me a lot of money if I left it on.
Yeah, and electricity, absolutely.
But yeah, I have engineer friends who leave their stuff on all the time, and I have other guys who turn their stuff off every night. And I don't know that anybody's necessarily right or wrong on that front.
But if they were to turn it off, you turn the speakers off first, and then the board. And
no, there's a whole system I have to go through to turn everything.
Then it's the opposite.
And then you flip it. Yeah, flip it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So
I suppose it would blow the speakers out if you didn't do it that way.
You can hurt the speakers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got your power amps on full, and
you'd wake up the neighbors.
Maybe wake up the neighbors. I've done it before. You're gonna screw it up once in a while, where you turn a piece of gear off while the power amp's still on, and it goes pop. Fortunately, I haven't blown anything, but it reminds me that I need to pay more attention. So yeah, the console it's pre-production APIs. When they first started making the EQ modules, the 500 series stuff, which is really popular right now, they started that, and they were doing custom installs, and this was a custom install up in a university up in northern Michigan. I'm not sure which one. And they used it to record their orchestras. And an outfit in Nashville bought this board and redid everything inside of it. And I bought it from them when I got it. So, so it's good. It's the first call I made before I bought it, though, was to my tech to make sure he wasn't moving anywhere. I said, Terry, what are your plans for the next 10 years? He said, why? And I showed him a picture of the board. He's like, oh, okay. So you don't go into any kind of vintage gear. You don't go into it thinking it's going to be this awesome thing. You have to accept that it's going to need maintenance. You have to put that into your cost. And it's quirky. And it's not nearly as efficient as running everything in the box. But I'm willing to make that sacrifice, at least right now. The whole process of, taking a mix outside the box, running it through the board, going through the analog compressors and delays and things like that, that's worth it to me to get the sound. And I have a theory about it, getting to 90%, most people are capable of. It's that extra 10% that we spend the rest of our lives trying to get.
Sure.
And that's what greatness lives, is in that last 10%.
I agree with that.
So I'm just trying to hang in as hard as I can and try to work as hard as I can to live in that last 10%. Yeah.
So are those NS10Ms on top of it?
Yeah, I've got NS10s there, and then I've got it's kind of hard to see in here, but every studio from the 70s or 80s has to have a pair of NS10s. I've got another pair of spiral grooves, which are smaller format but full range, and that's what I normally monitor through. They're really great. And then I've got a pair of, these are kind of fun. Let's see. Yeah, there's the spiral groove. And then next to that is a large format JBL, which I used for every studio needs a set of client monitors to just kind of play loud music through. And the JBL sound great for that. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's fun to pull up whatever music they want to hear and blast it at them and sound.
Sure. I'm a big fan of the NS10s. I have a set right here.
Oh yeah,
on either side of me.
They're your friend who tells you the things you don't want to hear.
Yeah, you ain't kidding.
So it's good, but if you're looking, if I'm trying to match, if I'm doing drum editing, some things like that, and I really need to hear the detail in the mid range, they definitely help me hear a lot of details like that. I can't. They fatigue pretty quickly just because of the mid range content, but so it's hard for me to listen to them long term. But if you can get them, like they always say, if you can get them sounding pretty decent on NS10s, it's going to work pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. So that outboard gear behind you, that you got a lot of stuff there.
Mostly compressors and effects. I've just been collecting stuff over a long period of time.
What would you say is the most important piece of gear in that whole collection of outboard gear?
Let's see. Turn on the lights. Most important.
Something you couldn't live without.
Okay. That would be the Neve 1272s. I've got a pair of those. That's what really kind of, when I was my first studio was kind of prosumer, and that's the first pro gear I bought. An engineer friend of mine told me, man, what you need to do is save $1,500 and get yourself a pair of Neves, And this was a while back because you can't get them for that anymore, but save up roughly $1,500 and get yourself a nice piece of gear, and just get one piece of gear every year. Save up that much money, buy one good piece of gear, and then 20 years later, you're going to have a really nice studio. So the first thing I bought was a pair of old Neve 1272s, and that just made the biggest difference in when I was recording stuff. I was like, this is amazing. These sound amazing. And I use those on every, you heard of every guitar sound on the Andy record was cut through those. So those are a big deal. After that, I love my 1176s, the compressors.
Sure.
Great classics. I tried to, I'd read articles about, who was using this gear and how they made this record. I love watching behind the scenes videos and looking at the gear that they're using. There's certain pieces of gear that keep showing up in every record, Neve, 1176, Yuri, Neumann, U67, these things keep popping up. They keep popping up for a reason. After I would get a hold of some of this gear, I'd be like, okay, I get it. That's why. Yeah,
it's I hear that. I just recently saw the behind the. I don't know if it was called Behind the Music, but it was a thing on Tom Petty's Damn the Torpedoes record.
Yeah.
And the sound of that record the sound of that record is a Neve board and 1176 compressors and all of that gear from the 70s is what made that record sound so good. The songs are great, but the sound of that record is just impeccable. For that matter, the sound of any Tom Petty record is incredible as far as I'm concerned. But it's just that thing. It's that vintage gear that makes those records sound so good. And it's the guy that's running it. But the sound of that stuff, the sound of today, it doesn't hold a candle to that stuff.
I definitely don't like to go, things were always better in the past, but
that's not true.
Kind of were.
Yeah.
And I go through this with gear all the time. I try to find a modern equivalent that I like as much as the vintage piece, and I just can't. It's really rare that I find something that is modern day that I like as much as a vintage piece. The gear back then, even starting from the 30s, when they were making RCA microphones, these ribbon microphones. I have several examples of some of these old RCA mics, and the gearing for to hold the microphone in place and stuff like that still feels solid, from 1935. And the microphones still work great. All you got to do is replace the ribbon element. They built these things to last, and they sound amazing. And they have, they were purpose built also. The gear happening from the 50s into the 60s was very large. It did one thing, and it did one thing only, and it did it really, really well. And now I think that we've gone to the convenience of being able to do all things, and in the digital world, doing everything in the box. And we've traded sound for convenience, and I get it. I mean, I don't have tape here. I've got my old 16 track, but I don't really use it that much. And the convenience of digital, we live in a digital world. The final format's going to be digital unless we print vinyl. So there's some acceptance that you have to do that to move forward. But sorry, I'm off. So yeah, there are trade-offs, and I've trying to straddle that line, with the digital stuff, and I don't have tape, but I have a radar system, which to me is the digital equivalent of tape. It doesn't do plugins. It does very limited editing and some punch-ins. So it runs like a tape deck, and it sounds exactly the way that I want it to. It has just amazing converters. And I every once in a while I kind of I'll get a little. I'll say, I need a Studer. I need to have a Studer. I need to have a Studer in my studio. And I'll do the math in my head and I'll think it through. It's like, you can't have one.
We're going to pull out tape.
You can't buy quality tape anymore. There's one company that makes tape and it's good, but it's not like the old BASF stuff. And it's going to cost you $350 a reel, and that's 15 or 30 minutes depending on how fast you're running it. And most bands or artists and musicians just can't afford the upfront tape cost, and you have to you deal with rental tapes, and then that gets worn down. So the economies of scale on that for the size of studio that I'm running just didn't work out. But I've got enough warmth on the front end that I'm not really worried about that as much. So I as long as the converters are good, and they are on the radar, I really like them. I feel like the sound that I can get the sound I'm looking for here, and I know it's going to I'm hearing will be captured.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, I've got all the Timmons records, and they all sound they have that warmth. And I know you didn't do all of them at your studio, but they all have that warmth, including the theme record. It's just. In fact, I think that's my favorite record from you guys.
Oh, thanks.
It's been in my CD player in my car now since I was at your show. It's pretty funny. It's on continuous run, and I hear those songs and I hear the sound of that record, and it's like I can't believe that was done in that room. Although I can believe it because look at the gear, but I can't believe it was done in that little room and not like Sound City. It's pretty incredible. You should really be proud of that. That's just incredible.
Well, thank you, and I am. We spent a lot of time to get that record to the point where we felt it was the best that we could do. And Andy and I definitely have a philosophy. We have a very high bar that we try to meet, and it has to be nothing less than the best that we can do. And when we feel like, we feel like at any moment we need to be able to drop the needle on the record.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great. And it'll be interesting. Wherever you drop that needle on the record, it's going to be good. I'm not going to be.
You can say that again, because I mean,
and you're going to want to listen to the rest of it out.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting from that point out. And it needs to, every single note needs to be accounted for. And is this a frivolous note? Is this a useful note? We go through this stuff, and my bass parts are very. We starting with the Resolution record, the process was through composed instead of chopping it up into verse, chorus, bridge. We have verse, chorus, bridge, but the melodies and the way that we're thinking about it is much more in the classical realm of a through composed piece. And that's the biggest difference. And that's a lot of it, that approach we're talking about with Andy, doing everything in one track, forced us to think in that manner. So we need to be able to, like I said, it needs to be able to flow and capture your imagination the whole way through.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. So I have a couple of questions. I have a question about the Sgt. Pepper record.
Okay.
Now, Andy had said that it's all one take, all one guitar. Is that the same for the bass and the drums? Was that all one take, everything one take, or was that just his guitars one take?
We did the rhythm tracks, and he played along with us. And I think he didn't. He might have kept some of the stuff that we did when we tracked everything in the studio. But he went back and he would play it through, kind of like the Resolution. It was the mindset of the Resolution where it was just going to be one guitar track. So he tracked it like that. I'm sure there was a punch in or two, but
maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe it was one guitar track instead of one take.
Yeah, that's
probably
what.
Yeah, that's now that I think about it, that is what he said. It's all one track, so there's everything is right there, which is
there were no overdubs as far as extra backing tracks or anything like that. And that was he wanted to approach that record like we did the Resolution, trying to recreate as a trio with just three parts.
It's a big record. It really is a big record.
Pull off maybe the greatest record. Yeah, we were really nervous. And
the fact that you guys do that every night, and it still sounds, it just sounds amazing. I mean, of course, it's going to sound better as you do it every night, but
yeah,
a record is supposed to be your best performance ever. Like it captures your best performance. And every night you guys play it. And I've heard Andy, I've seen Andy smile when he flubs a note here or when he's not happy with what he played exactly. But that's pretty serious stuff. I mean, playing those songs with just three instruments and getting that big a sound and it sounds like more than three instruments. It's just pretty incredible.
Well, thanks. When Andy first told me what he had in mind, when we were, going to start working on it, I was like, he said, "Yeah, man, I've been kind of playing around with some arrangements for Sgt. Pepper, and I think I want to do the whole record." And I was Okay.
How'd you guys get the okay to do that?
You just pay licensing. There's tons of people doing Beatles covers, so it's you just you just pay the licensing, and they get a cut. The Beatles get a cut of everything.
Now, has McCartney heard that, or Ringo?
We don't know. Efforts have been made to get copies to them, but who knows if they actually listen to it or not. So
Let's hope so.
you have to think about it like, hey, here's another version of your song. Do you want to hear this? And I would totally get it. And they're like, I don't want to hear another version of my song.
And the thing is, and I would be the opposite. I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, I want to hear what someone. If I wrote a song, if I wrote those songs and someone else is doing their thing to them, I'd be really interested. I think I would. And you know what? I mean, let's face it. Lukather plays with Ringo.
Yes.
I'm sure Andy and Lukather know each other, or they've crossed paths.
No,
I'm sure that Lukather has said, "Hey, check this out, Ringo." I'm sure that's happened. Now, on the other hand, with McCartney, I mean, not too many people can say
he's got a tighter circle. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's got to be a really cool feeling and a great feather in your cap to know that a Beatle has listened to your versions of their songs.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's happened, but that's cool. I do know that when Andy did his last year, he did a single version of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, incredible!
That he put out on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
and that got through. And Andy got a little text with a little his work, So
how cool is that?
That was very cool. He showed me the text, and I was like, dude. How awesome is that?
Yeah, and I saw you guys play that song too, and it's just another crazy song to play live. That was amazing.
Yeah, that's fun, and definitely challenging to play. Again, like this song that's so huge in people's minds and played as an instrumental is. To try to pull that off, it seems to go over well, and so we've been really happy when we do that.
How long did
people
you
start singing along at some of the bigger gigs? Get this huge chorus. People they sing along. And I get lost sometimes because I'm just enjoying the moment so much. I'm like, oh shit, I got B flat coming up.
How long? Yeah, right. How long did it take you to work that bass part out
on Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah.
Man, not that long because I'm playing his part.
Okay,
his
so you're playing the original
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing his part as close as I can to it. I have a couple of modifications to go along with the vocal and some of the breakdown stuff. Very, very little stuff like that, just to support what Andy's doing. But generally, I'm just playing it note for note because his parts are orchestral. You can't, if you play a different note on that song, people know it's just not. It doesn't sound right.
Right.
And if you're playing the right notes, it's like, oh, they're playing all the right notes, and it definitely travels a lot better if I'm doing what Roger's supposed to be doing, or it's.
Yeah, sure.
It's a brilliant part. All his bass part. We did a little medley when we did that the first time, and it was so cool. I had never really spent a lot of time moth again. So yeah, they're every note counts, and they're really well done. Mm-hmm. All those guys they were great. Still are.
Oh yeah, Queen, just wonderful band. I want to digress a little bit, and because I forgot to ask, what gauge strings do you use on your basses, and how do you like your action?
What gauge strings? 45 to 105 is my general.
Listen,
what
people
was the
love
second part
hearing
of the
that.
question?
People love hearing that shit. You know, they just love
Okay.
hearing about, you know, what guys use on their bass. And how do you like your action? Is it low or higher?
I play hard, and especially with Andy, I need a little give, and I want a little fight. So it's not super low. But it's not high to where my hands hurt by it, you know. It's so solidly in the middle. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I'm always tweaking the neck a little bit. Just I wonder if I could do that, and I got to go back and. Especially, I've been doing a lot of some solo stuff lately, so I've been trying to find a good sweet spot to where I can cover a wide range of things with the action, because I do some things where I got some crazy stretches, so the action's got to be reasonable.
And Fruitcake Tony asked a question earlier that I'm going to get to now.
Fruitcake.
Tony Neville is his name, really, but he kind of loves being called Fruitcake Tony. Hey, Fruitcake. He says, other than the vintage Fender basses that you have, are there any other basses that you do like? Anything new? Anything, you know, modern?
Well,
Louis, I'll get to your question next, Louis.
I've been playing this one. This is
Godin.
It's a Golden. I found this a couple of years ago, and I've been using it on some of my solo stuff, and it's just very nice. It's it's just got a nice little
nice acoustic guitar you got there, pal.
So I've got some arrangements that I do on this, and it works really, really well. So that's about as modern of a bass that I've got. What else? Let me look around here real quick. We'll play show and tell.
Okay.
This is an old Washburn fretless acoustic that I bought in '91 when I was touring with Sarah Hickman, and this is on "Cry for You."
Oh, awesome!
It's a little bit of delay, and that's the "Cry for You" right there. This thing is, you plug it in, it's kind of dominates anything. It's good.
It's very big.
You got to make sure you want it on your track, because it'll be there. It's like dropping a
Nothing
bomb.
wrong with that.
It's not as subtle as a Fender.
So our buddy Louis Rios, who was our guest last week, he's a good friend of mine I've known him for over 30 years, and he's a great guitar player, and he plays in a bunch of bands here in New York. He asks, what do you run? Do you run Logic or Pro Tools?
Logic. I was an early
Is there
adopter.
any reason why you go with that over Pro Tools?
Honestly, it's when I first started out with the computer, mid 90s, when I got a Mac, I spent all my money on the Mac, and I could not afford the hardware you had to buy to run Pro Tools. You had to spend another $8 to $10 grand to get the hardware to run Pro Tools. They were tied into the hardware. And Logic came out. They weren't owned by Apple at that point. It was a company called eMagic out of Germany, and they'd started out as a MIDI only, and then they started adding audio into the window, the work window. And people were saying, "Oh, this thing's amazing!" So, and that would work with any converters hardware that I wanted. So, I was an early adopter with Logic. They didn't they just added stuff. But they kept it basically the same workflow, even to the current day. There's just more stuff that you can do. Logic, it sounds. I prefer the sound of Logic to Pro Tools. There's people will say that a digital engine is a digital engine, and that is not true. I've worked in several different formats within my studio. I have Pro Tools on this one now since they've opened up their format a little bit. The engine does not sound the same. The summing inside the box does not sound the same. To my ear, I prefer Logic. I think Pro Tools sounds great as well. It's not my preference.
Okay.
I can do anything in Logic as well. It's very easy for me to work across formats in Logic. It accepts all formats, and you can export very easily. And the basic plugins that come in with it are great. But yeah, the workflow is just something I'm used to. I hope that is an answer for you.
Yeah, it is. He also had another question. He said, how long did it take you to craft that amazing guitar sound on Resolution?
Which track? I would say that each track took us upwards of 2 to 3 weeks. And that was just trying, like I said, we called it tone questing, to try to find the sound that was going to work all across the neck and throughout the entire tune, depending on how he was, wanting it to come across. And it's all about mood and tone, and that was what we were concentrating at the time. So yeah, several weeks to try different gear. We'd start out, Andy's got a pair of Marshalls. He's got an old Plexi and then a mid-70s Fawn JTM. And
I've seen that amp. That amp is in the middle of his videos that he does.
Yeah.
Every other day he does a new song on Instagram. That amp is right there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No, that's generally where we start, and we will go a lot of different places. And that's where we end up at the end of the day. You
can't be a good old Marshall. You can't.
No, well, yeah, and we would go, well, we'll try the Marshall. That sounds pretty good.
Maybe if an older
see
Marshall.
What else sounds good, and see if we can get something else out of a different amp that maybe we're not getting out of the Marshalls. And we would do this trial and error for every track. Different cabinets, maybe a 412 versus a 212. What about a single open back? We were insane, and I don't know that anybody besides Eric Johnson has gone to the lengths that we've gone to when we're tracking guitar. Because it's expensive, and you brought up the price of when you have your own studio, you can charge your own rate for that. And for us, I have the studio for my own projects, and I want to make great music with it. That's my goal. Anybody who's operating a studio to make money is not making money. There's just no money in recording these days. Right. As a studio, there's just not.
I was going to ask.
I have a couple of friends that do okay with it, but it's a lot of work, and the studio rates have not increased since the 60s. You look at receipts for what the Rolling Stones paid in Memphis, and it's about the same as what you charge today. So, this is for me. It's a labor of love, and I have my own studio because I want to produce my own records here on my own terms, and that's the philosophy. With a guy like Andy, we can make really great records, and that's our goal. So I have no, whenever he thought we were taking too much time on something or he was bothering me, I'm like, no, man, let's keep let's maybe take a break, and we'll come back to it tomorrow, or next week, and we're going to get this. I know we'll get this. We'll figure it out, and we always did. There's we just had the faith. We kept the faith. And
well, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Those records sound amazing, and just everything about it, just and the songs are also, the songs themselves are memorable, and they hold my attention, and it's very hard to do with instrumental rock music. It's very hard to hold people's attention, and every song has its own thing, and I mean his it's almost lyrical the way he plays. Like the songs have the guitar is its own lyric. If that makes any sense. It sounds like you can hum every song. It's just amazing. Everything has. I mean, Electric Gypsy. Let's take that song for example. Yeah. Who writes a song like that? Who thinks of that? That's just incredible. That's an incredible song. I gotta
held up
the whole thing.
Yeah, no, that was on the first record, and it has staying power.
Holds up. I mean, yeah, and you still play that song after your solo?
Yeah, it's always in the set, and we really haven't. We've opened up the middle section a little bit for Andy to kind of have fun, but we've kept it the same. I mean, it's a great tune, and if we have hits, that's one of our hits. That and "Cry for You" and a couple other songs. But we were in Greece a few years ago, and Andy was playing through. They didn't have the Istanbul. It was Istanbul, and we weren't able to get our rigs there, so we had to play whatever backline they had at the club, and it wasn't good. It was but we're professionals. We powered through. And in the middle of Gypsy, right, we're playing, and his amp goes out, and the crowd hears this, and they just start. I'm still playing, and Rob's back there, and we're still playing. Maybe Andy can figure out what it is and join us back in at some point. But the audience just sang the song, just da 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 da. They knew the melody, they knew the chorus. It was kind of insane. We're just looking at each other. Well, we don't take your time, Andy. I think they got you.
Yeah, all I need is a little overdrive pedal on everyone.
Right.
There's
moments like that. It's like, wow, okay, the song.
That's
and
cool.
The other, a few months ago, there was a video that these young kids put out. There's like 3 or 4 kids from different parts of the world, and they did their own version of Electric Gypsy. And for kids to think of it as part of the guitar canon is really, it's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a song you need to learn if you're going to be a guitar player. That's pretty awesome.
There's a video. I think Andy's in South America, and he's playing. It might be "Cry for You." I'm not sure. And the kid that's playing with him is playing with his feet, and he's playing all of Andy's licks with his feet. That's
goosebumps whenever I think about that video. It's so stunning. Andy was blown. And you can tell Andy's Andy. I mean, he's not acting.
This is one of the sweetest gentlemen on the planet, and you're in the same boat. The two of you, I can't. Nicer guys,
an amazing moment for. Andy was just truly blown away, and I think that video itself, I mean, had immediately over a couple million hits. It took off for the right reasons,
Yeah. Well, I watched that video, and I'm disabled, so I watched that video, and right away I find that I don't have a problem in the world, and because this guy's he's got no arms, and he's playing guitar like a pro with his feet, and I have, and I've
the
got
pitch
nothing.
bends.
Yeah,
I can't
yeah.
get pitch bends.
I get it.
Yeah. It
So
was amazing.
I then automatically think I don't have a problem in the world. Why? I compared to that guy, I don't have a problem in the world, and it's humbling. It's a really humbling video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's and you may not want to think about it in terms of like, you know, what our own situation is, because everybody's got their struggles. But it's just to me, yeah, it's inspiring, you know. You know, I can't sing. This is not the same thing, but I figured out ways that I could be in music without singing, and trouble. You know, everybody has things that they have to fight through.
Mm-hmm.
This is coming off not the right way, but I find that everybody has struggles, and we all find our way through it. And you know, that kid is amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. So all right, anyone in the chat, anyone have any questions for Mike? Anything that you want to ask him or tell him, or anyone want his number? I don't know, anything. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I was going to ask you, Mike, do you produce other bands, like local bands?
Yeah. No, I have a lot of different projects that roll through here. It's mostly singer-songwriter kind of stuff, which I really enjoy. And I've got a couple guitar players that I work with that have fusion-y kind of things, and they're looking for someone who can help them with guitar tones. And so I do that. But I've had several projects, and I've always kind of engineered whatever band I was in.
Yeah.
You know, I had a band called Ugly Mus-tard, and we put out about 2.5 records in the early 90s, and it was kind of a heavy industrial band. And for what the gear that I had at that time, I'm pretty proud of those records. And and then just a lot of weird stuff over the years. When I first started engineering, I had a little 16-track deck and a 16-channel board, and like I said, and I think I charged $100 for an 8-hour day just to get bands through and experience.
Wow.
And so I recorded half of Dallas at that point in time, just because nobody had gear, for one. This is way before ADATs and computer gear. So if you had a multi-track, more than a 4-track cassette, you know, you could set up a studio. So yeah, I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. And just Dallas at that point in time was kind of a hotbed for just really cool, creative bands. And you had this kind of trickle down effect from North Texas, which is it's about 30 miles north of Dallas. Their drum department is bar none one of the best drum departments, and it produces some of the best drummers in the world. And that filtered down into the Dallas scene, and you know, all these guys who can, you know, even if they never learned jazz, they were hearing other people, and that was filtering into their music. And so just amazing, great musicians running around in Dallas, and that keeps me busy too. And I write and record my own stuff as well.
That's cool. Louis has another question. I'm gonna amend it a little bit. For what microphones do you mic guitar cabinets with, and do you like the Royer 122?
Okay, here's where we get into some hot sports opinions. On all of Andy's stuff, it is the least expensive mic. It's the SM57, and there you go. it just wins. It wins every time. A properly placed SM57 is going to win. Especially with Andy and rock guitars and the Marshalls. I have a lot of really nice microphones, and I've tried pretty much every microphone that you would want to try on a guitar. And I have the Royers, and I think they sound great, but when I get down to, and I'll track the Royers as well. I'll track a 57 in the Royer. It's a pretty popular thing to do. And we end up just going with the 57s. They just have a little bit more pop and presence. They travel well across speakers in different settings. The Royers, just because of a little bit of a scoop, a little smoother sound, they don't necessarily have that pop across going from earbuds to your car for those types of things. It's the 57 seems to really travel well for guitar. And Eric Johnson, he ends up playing with a 57 most of the time too. So that's it. For other projects, I used the Royers. I love the 57. It's always going to be in the mix. I have an old RCA 77DX, which is the kind of capsule shaped ribbon mic, and that one wins quite a bit. That's a really great microphone. It just has a lot more character than the modern Royers do. The Royers are really consistent and sound great. I use them on drums a lot, sometimes on acoustic guitar. But they don't generally win on the electric guitar front, like a lot of people. And I know a lot of people really love them, but that's just a personal preference.
Now, do you think it's because the cabinet, the distorted cabinet, the speakers hit that microphone so hard that it just doesn't hold up to a 57?
The Royers hold up just fine. Amazingly well for a ribbon, really. They're just different elements. The Royer's not going to compress the same way that the 57 does. There's a little bit of compression that happens on a 57 that's kind of just right. It just works really well. I can't explain it further than that. And I've tried, believe me, I've tried a lot of different mics.
Yeah, you can't beat a classic. And
same thing for snare too. I mean, people
Yeah.
like it just kind of works great.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate that I can experiment with a lot of different things, but like sometimes you just want to capture it and make sure you've got a good capture, and you know that these are the things that work, and you will be able to use them. So I'll throw different things up there but I always have there's always the bread and butter staple stuff.
Yeah. What do you call it? It's bundling. You'll bundle different microphones together.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And PAL guitars, yeah, I know this is a 58, but I use a 57 as well. I've got it right there. But I mean, you can interchange a lot of that stuff. The Shure stuff is great.
The element is the same from a 57 to 58. It's the same element.
It's the same thing. It's just the top's different.
It's just the windscreen's different.
Yeah.
And
So it's the same. Yeah, that's what I meant.
The windscreen on the 57, it's got this little air gap that allows it to have a fuller frequency or smoother frequency, and then same thing with 58. And I do love the fact that Shure is really, really smart, and they have not changed those microphones. You can still go and buy one today, and it's going to actually be the same as one you bought 20 years ago.
$99
for under $100. Yeah, I know guys. I know guys. They record everything through a 57, and they just
nothing wrong with it.
And they EQ it to match whatever they need to. It's a full frequency microphone. It's not. It's being a dynamic. It's not sensitive like a more expensive mic might be.
that you can't drop.
And you can mix drinks with a 57 and set it out.
You know, you can run over this mic with your car, and it still sounds great.
Right.
God forbid you have bad breath though, because it gets stuck in there.
Well, they're cheap enough. You can bring your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to sing through somebody else's.
Oh, that's the worst. You know, you show up for a gig, you know, at a bar somewhere, and you go up to your mic, and the windscreen is all dented and like
Lipstick and
different color, and has just like a stink to it. Yeah, but it'll still sound great.
I did live sound in a club here in Dallas, and we, with the 58s, we would clean out almost every night. We'd disinfect them and stuff, but we couldn't believe how much abuse they could take. You know, they get dumped in beer, and we just rinse them out, clean them up, put them back on, let them dry out, and they sounded great.
Less filling. Tastes great.
I like a good workhorse. I like workhorse stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's what they are, definitely. Hey, Michael. Michael Smith is here.
What's up, Michael?
We're just getting started, dude. Remember that time we did 9 hours? Well, this time.
Yeah, Mike's gonna stay with us the whole time.
Yeah, and Rosie McPherson is watching us over on Facebook.
Hey, Rosie. Oh, she can't hear us.
So,
she can't hear me, can she?
No, she can hear you. You just
cool.
you can't see your chat.
Right.
But yeah, she said something earlier about how Larry loves Andy.
Yeah, they're very good friends. They're very good friends.
Yeah. And Music Therapy Laz, thank you so much.
And Larry Mitchell, I think Andy is his number one, like he's of all the guitar players, of today, I think Andy's his favorite.
Larry's awesome, man. We love Larry.
Sweetheart of a guy, great guitar player, and just, always smiling. You never know when he's having a bad day. It's just amazing. Really amazing. And he's going to be up here. I think April 8th or so. I think he's staying here for a couple of days, staying at my place for a couple of days, doing a gig, I think, upstate. So, yeah. And I'll also, I've extended my place to you and Andy as well when you're in New York. I know you guys like to stay in Manhattan and you have family up here. But if there's ever a time where you need a place to crash, you're more than welcome to stay here. I've got extra rooms.
All right, appreciate it.
There's only one bass.
What's that?
There's only one bass in the house.
Well, I'm sure he'll have his. Yeah. But there are some pretty cool guitars in this room. I will tell you, it still impresses me. I look at this room and I'm like, wow, I have all this stuff.
Yeah. Now, are those mostly artist signatures?
Yeah, on that back wall, yes, there are. They are mostly artist signatures, but the ones that are in front of me are the ones that are my gigging guitars, the ones I play every day. Actually, the section over there, I have a few SGs, an old Les Paul, an old Telecaster, and a couple of Strats. But yeah, the ones in front of me are the ones I play every day. Those on the wall. There's a couple on the wall I try to play every day as well, but most of them are just, they're really, really, really good wall hangers. Can't play them all every day, but I try to keep them all in tune. Everything in this room is in tune. Yeah, and everything has a good set of strings on it, and it's maintenance every day.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, strings. There's a lot of strings. Almost 50 guitars worth of strings in here.
Dang. And Rosie says that Larry will be in town April 10th.
Yeah, I think he's coming. He may be coming a couple days early, just to get a couple days of rest.
Awesome.
Yeah. That may change. Who knows? But he said last time I spoke to him, which was a couple days ago, he said he's probably going to come up a couple days early.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Anyway, so what else do we have? Let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Anything?
Well,
Hang on.
Rosie says probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I yeah. Yes.
Yes. Come on. My buddy Louie again. I don't know if you're gonna know this, Mike, because it's really a guitar pedal board thing, but he wanted to know what tube screamers were used on the Resolution record. Were they vintage or were they newer ones, or for the distorted guitar?
When there was a tube screamer in play, it was an old 808 that Andy has, and we, in true fashion, we had a bunch of them. If you knew that was kind of what he was looking for, was a tube screamer, we'd get a variety of pedals and we'd shoot them out. And he's got an old 808 that he picked up on the road a while back, and it kind of wins every contest. And he keeps that. He puts that on his live board. It goes in and out, I think, but it definitely still uses it.
Yeah, I've seen it come in and out of his board.
Yeah, and then other distortions he would use. He's got the old Chandler tube drivers, and
yeah, the Eric Johnson pedal.
Yeah, and that's a lot of lead tones on Resolution and on Theme. It's that combination. It's a winner for a reason.
Yeah, it's a staple.
Yeah, that won a lot of things. So that, and then I've got a couple of old Echoplexes that we throw in there as well. Everything was run stereo. We had two Marshall heads that we talked about into two different cabinets. The majority of the time I would spend is phase aligning those mics. That was a huge task. And Andy actually wrote the song Resolution because I'd be monitoring something while he's tracking, and I'd go out into the other room. He'd play something really quietly, and he just started playing that.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my mic movement song. And at one point I said, man, you need to finish that. That's actually really good. He's like, okay. So he finished that song, and that became the title track.
That's awesome.
But I was out in the other room, just barely moving a 57 and going back, testing it in mono, then going back out, making sure that that was a process. It's a lot easier now. I have a better eye for where the spots are, and I don't have to do as much of that these days. But yeah, the process is just kind of Andy getting a sound with the doors open in between the two rooms, and it's like that's a pretty good tone. And then I would take the 57 out there, mic one cabinet, see if it sounds good in the studio or on the speakers. And then I'd take another microphone, try to match that, and then get those phase aligned to where they would match in mono, and then you flip the phase, the phase flip trick, and see if you can make it disappear. And then you're getting pretty close. It'll never totally disappear, but you can get it close.
Right.
And that's usually a good spot.
That's awesome.
Not a lot of other stuff going on. He might, if there's maybe a trick pedal like an Octavia kind of thing like that. He would use that once in a while. But the bread and butter pedals were the tube screamer versus the tube driver.
Yeah, both sound equally great.
Very, they're great, and they're very different. Tube screamers is a little great for rhythm, chordal things, and then the lead tone would be the tube driver.
Yeah. This has been awesome, Mike. I really appreciate this. We both really appreciate this this time with you. It's a little after 10 o'clock here. It's been over 2 hours, and I think we're going to call it a night. But I'd love to have you on for a part 2, especially with our buddy Jay when he's able to come back and talk more outboard gear and more of the producing side, more of the recording side. If that's okay with you, would you be into doing that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
Like I said, man, if you want to,
whenever you have some time. Whenever you have some time. But yeah, again, thank you so much, Mike Daane. Thanks everyone in the chat for hanging out with us and the cool questions and Johnny, what do you think?
That was awesome, Mike. Thank you so much.
Man, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's a blast. And like I said, it goes so fast. It went so fast.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. And again, we were live on Facebook tonight as well as YouTube. So check out the stream. Leave a thumb.
Just not this one. Oh.
Subscribe, like, share. Check out Mike Daane.
Where can people find?
Do you have a site?
Man, I'm terrible. I have a Facebook and I do have an Instagram account, but I never post to it. I'm horrible at self-promotion, and I have two young boys. They need to just kick my ass and get me a website or something. I think I have like the domains. I have MikeDaane.com and stuff like that, but I don't have a website.
Mm-hmm. You can point that domain to like a page you already have. Like you could point that to your Instagram.
I know.
It's okay.
I'm busy with other stuff, man.
I tell you what, if anyone wants to get in touch with Mike Daane, contact me and I'll call him and ask him all the questions you want.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes. Brian, good to see you, dude. Everybody, Joseph, Joe Hervey, Rosie McPherson over on Facebook. Music Therapy Labs. Again, Music Therapy, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll meet up soon. Music Therapy lives in my area. And I think we were talking about getting together and hitting some guitar shops. Dutchy 5150, I think I saw right there. BC Rich 581 was here. Michael Smith. Music. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night for Saturday night with John BL. I wonder if Jay will be here then.
With a baby here for 3 days, I don't think he's going to be on any shows in the next couple of weeks.
Well, he hasn't been on for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think he's going to be missing a couple shows. Or his wife's going to have his head.
It's all good. It's all good. Congratulations again to Jay Hannon.
Yes, Jay and Jeannie Hannon and Ellie.
Brand new one. So, all right, rock on, you guys. And see you guys tomorrow night. Mike, thank you again so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And stick around for a second while we end this.
Sure.
All right, where's the thing? Where is it? I'll put up the thing for there we go. Right there.
There it is.
All right. See you guys later. johnnybeane.tv.